In this video, we will talk about dimensional analysis and how it can be utilized in nutrition. I'm sure you're wondering what dimensional analysis is and why exactly you have to learn it. Dimensional analysis is a problem-solving method that we use to convert numbers in one unit to another. Nurses have to use this when calculating medications. And a typical scenario might be that a nurse has to administer penicillin 0.5 grams orally every 6 hours. The pharmacy dispenses penicillin in 250 milligram tablets. How many tablets should you administer for each dose? Note that the units are different. The pharmacist has 250 milligram tablets. You need to figure out how many tablets would be equal to 0.5 grams. You can see how this method of converting units from one to another might be very helpful in this situation. But rest assured, we're not going to get anything that difficult yet. We are going to start with some simple ideas with calculating the macronutrient calories and grams. And we learned that with the macronutrients, the carbohydrates for each gram, there are 4 calories. A gram of protein has 4 calories, a gram of fat has 9 calories, and alcohol, although not really considered a nutrient, every gram has 7 calories. Let's do a sample problem and go through some steps in how we would use the dimensional analysis approach. Starting with this question. 1 serving of cereal contains 30 grams of carbohydrate. How many calories from carbohydrates is she consuming? Using dimensional analysis, we first start with what is the desired unit? In other words, what are we looking for in the end, in the answer? What unit will that be? So looking at this question, we see that calories are what we will have in our final answer, that unit. So we write this at the end of the equation because that's going to be our answer. We also add this to the beginning in the numerator of the first ratio. So the end unit and the first number, the numerator of the first ratio, will have the same units. The next step. Determine your first factor. That first factor is going to be this ratio. What conversion do we know about calories? Well, we know we're talking about carbohydrates, right? So let's look at our conversion chart, and I wrote it over here to be handy. We see that 1 gram of carbohydrate is equal to 4 calories. In this case, we will write the ratio as our first factor. 4 calories over 1 gram. Next step, look at the unit in the denominator. This must be the unit that we put in the numerator of the next factor. So we look in the question. It says 1 serving of cereal contains 30 grams. We need grams to match. So we write that in our equation. 30 grams, and the ratio would just be over 1. These factors negate each other, so we cross them out. And that leaves us just with calories, which is what we want in the end, right? Then we do the math. 4 times 30 over 1 equals 120 calories. So the answer is 120 calories. Okay, now let's try another problem. The problem reads, 1 candy bar has 9 grams of fat. If you ate 3 candy bars, how many calories would you consume? We do this the same way, starting with the first step. What is the desired unit? In this question, we're asking how many calories would you consume? We write this at the end of the equation and in the numerator of the first ratio. Step 2. Determine your first factor. What conversion do we know about calories. In this question, we're talking about fat. So let's look in our conversion chart and see 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories. So we write this in our first factor, 9 calories over 1 gram. The next step, look at the unit in the denominator. We have grams. This must be the unit in the numerator of your next factor. So we look up in the question and we see that there are 9 grams of fat. We write that as 9 grams over 1. These factors negate each other, so we cross them out, leaving us with just calories, which is what we need in the final answer. We're adding an extra step here because there was a little more information in the question. Let's go back and look for additional information in the problem. We see that there are 3 candy bars consumed. So we add that to our equation, times 3. Then we do the math. 9 times 9 times 3 over 1, which equals 243 calories from fat in those 3 candy bars. Okay, one more problem. This time we're going to do it without all of the steps written out. We're just going to take this one step at a time, but doing it orally. The dietitian tells you to consume 25% of your 2,000 daily calories from protein. How many grams of protein should you consume? The first step is to identify what unit we are trying to solve for. In this case, we are trying to solve for grams. So we would write grams as our final unit, and then we also write it as the numerator of the first factor. Now we look to see what factor we can use that involves grams. So we look in our conversion chart and we know we're talking about protein. So we see that 1 gram equals 4 calories. We would write 1 gram over 4 calories. The next step is to identify the unit in the denominator. The denominator is calories. Remember that this now has to go up into the numerator of the next factor. So what do we know about the question that identifies calories? We have 2,000 calories. We write that as our next factor. And this is going to be over 1 because there's nothing it's comparing it to. Then we look back to the question for additional information. And in this case, we see that it is 25%. Well, 25% is also written as 25 over 100. So this we would then do the math. 1 times 2,000 times 25 in the numerator. And in the denominator, we have 4 times 1 times 100. And if you do that math, you end up with, I think it's 50,000 over 400, which then equals 125 grams. So that is all we're going to cover for today, but there's more to come later in the semester.